Hey y'all, hope all is well. I've been looking for a name to call people that regularly visit this channel or at least watch these videos, and I was thinking of Monkey Lover because it sounds like a curse that already exists. If you say it, you can probably hear what I'm talking about. Monkey Lover. Um, but I don't like the implication of monkey lover, so maybe like just hot tea drinkers for now. Um, it's a little wordy, but it'll do in the interim. Uh, it's been about 4 days since I recorded. I liked the break a little bit. If I can crank out recording two of these a day, just so I can have it like that much in advance, that'd be great. If I ever get to the point where I'm like multiple weeks in advance recorded, maybe I'll start like a Patreon or something. I'm not sure. Um, just so people can get the content immediately. Because I do kind of want to limit it to one a day. But yeah, let me know what y'all think. Uh, Other than that, I've just been helping people move. I built a pool today, and I've been struggling with bureaucratic hell. It's just been awful getting bounced between my insurance agency and the DMV. Um, it's just awful. But not to start this off on a bad note, I'll take a sip from my delicious hot beverage and we'll get into it. Maybe I'll have to timestamp this one because I've rambled on for so long. Where are we at? 2 minutes. Wow. Okay. We'll call it 2:15. Chapter 35. The power of heterodoxy oppresses the true nature. The mind ape wins the treasures and beats the demons. Lucid, the true nature. The way explains itself. With one turn, one jumps out of the net. To learn transformations is very hard indeed. To become immortal is no common deed. Pure yields to foul, and foul to pure, as fate's wheel turns. Break through the kalpus, and travel freely. Wander at will through countless billion years, a spot of sacred light ever shining in the void. This poem is an apt but indirect description of how wonderful the great sage's powers were. Now that he had won the demon's treasure and had it tucked into his sleeve, he thought with delight. That damn demon went to such a lot of trouble to capture me, but it was, as they say, like trying to fish the moon out of water. But for me to try to capture you would be like melting ice on a fire. Concealing the gourd about him, he slipped outside, reverted to his own form, and shouted at the top of his voice. Open up, you devils! Who do you think you are, shouting like that? Asked the devils who were there. Tell your damned demon kings at once that Son the Novice is here, he replied. The demons rushed in to report, Your Majesties, there's a Novice the Son or something at the doors. The senior king was shocked. This is terrible, brother, he said. We've stirred up a whole nest of them. Son the Novice is tied up with the dazzling golden cord, and the Novice Son is inside the gourd. So how can there be a Novice the Son as well? They must all be brothers, and all have come. Don't worry, brother, the junior king replied. I can put 1,000 people into my gourd, and at present I've only got the Novice Son inside. No need to be afraid of Novice the Sun or whoever. I'm going out to take a look and put him inside too. Do be careful, said the senior Demon King. Watch as the junior king goes out through the doors with his gourd, as heroic and impressive as the previous time. Where are you from? He shouted at the top of his voice. And how dare you rant and roar here? Don't you know who I am? Monkey said. My home is on the Mount of Flowers and Fruit. Long have we lived in Water Curtain Cave, for making havoc in the heavenly palace. For ages did I rest from war and strife. Since my delivery from woe, I've left the way, and now I serve a monk. As a believer, I go to Thunder Shrine to seek the scriptures and come back to truth. Now that I've met you damned fiends, all of my magic powers I've had to use. Give back to us the priest who's come from Tang, to travel west and visit the Lord Buddha. The rival sides have fought for long enough. Let all of us now live in peace together. Don't make old Monkey lose his fiery temper, for if he does, he'll surely wipe you out. Come here, said the demon. I won't hit you. I'll just call your name. Will you answer? If you call my name, said Monkey, I'll reply. But will you answer if I call your name? If I call you, said the demon, I have a miraculous gourd that people can be packed into. But if you call me, what have you got? I've got a gourd too, Monkey replied. If you have, then show me, said the demon. Monkey then produced the gourd from his sleeve and said, Look, damned demon. He flourished it, then put it back in his sleeve in case the demon tried to snatch it. The sight was a great shock to the demon. Where did he get his gourd? He wondered. Why is it just like mine? Even gourds from the same vine are different sizes and shapes, but that one is identical. He then shouted angrily at Monkey, Novice the Sun, where did you get your gourd? As Monkey really did not know where it was from, he answered with another question. Where did you get yours? Not realizing that this was a trick Monkey had learned from experience, the demon told the true story from beginning. When chaos was divided and heaven separated from earth, there was this Lord Lao Tzu who took the name of the goddess Nua to smelt a stone to mend the heavens and save the continent of Jambu. When he put in the missing part of the heavenly palace, he noticed a magic vine at the foot of Mount Kunlun, on which this gold and red gourd was growing. It has been handed down from Lord Lao Tzu to the present day. Hearing this, Monkey carried on in the same vein. That's where my gourd came from too. How can you tell? The Demon King asked. When the pure and the coarse were first divided, the great sage replied, heaven was incomplete in the northwest corner, and part of the earth was missing to the southeast. So the great Taoist patriarch turned himself into Nua to mend the sky. As he passed Mount Kunlun, there was a magic vine with 2 gourds growing on it. The one I've got is the male one, and yours is the female one. Never mind about the sex, said the demon. It's only a real treasure if it can hold people inside. Quite right, said Monkey. You tried to put me inside first. The overjoyed demon sprang into midair with a bound, held out his gourd, and called, "Novice the sun!" Without hesitation, the great sage replied 8 or 9 times, but was not sucked inside. The monster came down, stamping his feet, pounding his chest, and exclaiming, "Heavens! Who said that the world never changes? This treasure's scared of its old man. The female one hasn't the nerve to pack the male inside." "Put your gourd away now," said Monkey. "It's my turn to call your name." With a fast somersault, he leapt up, turned his gourd upside down, with its mouth facing the demon, and called, "Great King Silverhorn!" The demon could not keep quiet. He had to answer, and he went whistling into the gourd. Monkey then attached a label, reading, "To the great Lord Lao, to be dealt with urgently, in accordance with the statutes and ordinances." "Well, my boy," he thought with pleasure, "today you've tried something new." He landed his cloud, still carrying the gourd. His only thought was to rescue his master as he headed for the Lotus Flower Cave. The mountain path was most uneven, and he was besides bow-legged, so as he lurched along, the gourd was shaken, making a continuous sloshing sound. Do you know why this was? The great sage's body had been so thoroughly tempered that he could not be putrefied in a hurry. The monster, on the other hand, though able to ride the clouds, only had certain magical powers. His body was still essentially that of an ordinary mortal, which putrefied as soon as it went into the gourd. Not believing that the demon had already turned to pus, Monkey joked, "I don't know whether that's piss or saliva, my lord, but I've played that game too. I won't take the cover off for another 7 or 8 days, by when you'll have turned to liquid. What's the hurry? What's so urgent? When I think how easily I escaped you, you deserve to be out of sight for 1,000 years." As he was carrying the gourd and talking like this, he was back at the doors of the cave before he realized it. He shook the gourd, and it kept making that noise. "It's like a fortune-telling tube that you shake a stick out of," he thought. "I'll do one and see when the master will be coming out." Watch him as he shakes and shakes it, repeating over and over again the spell, "King Wen's Book of Changes, Confucius the Sage, Lady of the Peach Blossom, Master Ghost Valley." When they saw him, the little devils in the cave said, "Disaster, your majesty. Novice the Sun has put his junior majesty in the gourd and is shaking it." The news sent all the senior king's souls flying and turned his bones and sinews soft. He collapsed, howling aloud. "You and I sneaked out of the world above to be reborn among mortals, brother. Our hope was to share glory forever as rulers of this cave. We never dreamt that this monk would kill you and part us." All the devils in the cave wept and wailed. The sound of all this howling was too much for Pig hanging from his beam. "Stop howling, demon!" He could not help himself shouting. "And listen to me. Son the novice who came first, the novice son who came next, and novice the son who came last all have the same name shuffled around, and they are all my fellow disciple. He can do 72 transformations. He got in here by changing, stole your treasure, and put your brother inside it. Now that he's dead, there's no need for all this misery. Have your cooking pot scrubbed clean and cook some gill mushrooms and button mushrooms, tea shoots, bamboo shoots, bean curd, gluten, tree fungus, and vegetables. Then you can invite my master, my fellow disciple, and me down to say a life sutra for your brother. I thought Pig was well behaved, roared the Demon King in fury. But he most certainly is not, mocking me like that. He then called on the little devils. Stop wailing and let Pig down. Cook him till he's nice and tender, and when I've made a good meal of him, I'll go out and take my revenge on Son the Novice. Wonderful, grumbled Friar Sand at Pig. I told you to keep your mouth shut. Your reward for blabbing will be to be cooked first. The idiot was quite frightened by now. A little devil standing beside him said, Your Majesty, Pig will be hard to cook. Thank heavens, said Pig. Is this brother winning himself some merit? It's true, I wouldn't cook well. Then another little devil said, He'll cook if he's skinned first. Yes, said Pig in desperation. I'll cook. My skin and bones may be coarse, but they'll boil tender. I'm done for. I'm done for. Before Pig had finished shouting, a little devil came in from outside to report that Novice the Son was there again and being very abusive. Damn him! He thinks we're completely useless, exclaimed the senior Demon King with horror. Hang Pig up again, he told the little demons, and check what treasures we have left. We still have 3 in the cave, reported the steward devil. Which 3? The Demon King asked. The 7-star sword, the plantain fan, and the pure vase, replied the steward. The vase is useless, said the Demon King. All you used to need to do was to call someone's name and get a reply for them to be put inside. But now Son the Novice has learned the words of the spell and put my brother in it. We won't need that. Leave it here. Fetch me the sword and the fan at once. The steward immediately fetched them for the old demon, who tucked the fan inside the back of his collar and took the sword in his hand. Then he mustered all 300 or more of his devils and drilled them in the use of spear, staff, rope, and sword. The senior Demon King then put on his helmet and breastplate, over which he threw a cloak of fiery red silk. The demons fell into battle formation, ready to capture the great sage Sun. The great sage, meanwhile, now aware that the junior Demon King had rotted down inside the gourd, tied it up very tight and fastened it to his belt, then prepared to fight, his gold-banded cudgel in his hand. The old demon, his red battle flag unfurled behind him, leapt out through the doors of the cave. This was how he was dressed. Dazzling bright the tassels on his helmet, brilliantly colored the belt at his waist. The armor he wore was made of dragon scales, covered with a cloak of burning fire. Lightning flashed from his glaring eyes, smoke curled up from his bristles of steel. Lightly he lifted the 7-star sword, his shoulders covered by the plantain fan. He moved like clouds drifting from an island, sounded like thunderbolts shaking the mountains. His mighty prowess would oppress heaven's warriors, as he wrathfully led his devils from the cave. He ordered the little devils into battle positions at once, then started hurling abuse. Thoroughly ill-mannered ape, you've murdered my brother and ruined our fraternal love. You're utterly loathsome. Detestable monster, replied Monkey in kind. You hang on to your devilish life for all you're worth, but how do you expect me to stand for my master, my fellow disciples, and horse, all being hung up in your cave for no good reason at all? It's intolerable. Hand them over to me this moment and throw in some generous traveling expenses. Then I'll be cheerfully on my way and spare your rotten life. With no more ado, the demon lifted his sword and struck at Monkey's head, while Monkey raised his iron cudgel to meet him. It was a fine battle they fought outside the gates. Indeed, the gold-banded cudgel and the seven-star sword, flashing like lightning as they meet. The chill wind from them makes one cold, while the mighty banks of the cloud blot out the ridges. One, moved by brotherly love, would do no act of kindness. The other, out to save the pilgrim, showed no touch of mercy. The two sides seethed with equal hatred, each of them sharing the same loathing. They fought so hard that heaven and earth were thrown into darkness. Gods and demons were terrified. The sun went pale in the dense smoke. Dragons and tigers trembled. One gnashed his teeth as if filing nails of jade. The other's glaring eyes burned with golden fire. Moving to and fro, they showed off their valor in an endless play of sword and cudgel. When the old demon had fought 20 rounds with Monkey, and neither had emerged the victor, he waved the scabbard of his sword and called all his little devils forward. Over 300 of them all rushed up and surrounded Monkey. The splendid great sage, quite unperturbed, used his cudgel to strike and parry to either side, before and behind. The little devils all had great skill, and they fought their way ever closer to him, tying him up as if in a tangle of silk floss as they tugged at his waist and legs. They would not retreat. The great sage was so alarmed by this that he used extracorporeal magic. Plucking a bunch of hairs from under his left ribs, he chewed them to pieces that he blew out with the shout, "Change!" Every piece turned into another monkey. Just watch as the biggest ones wield cudgels, the short ones used their fists, and the tiniest ones, with no other way of attacking, grabbed knuckles and sank their teeth into muscles. The little devils were put to rout. "Your Majesty," they yelled, "it's all going wrong. We're in terrible trouble. The whole mountain and everywhere else is swarming with Sun the novices." Now that his little devils had been thrown back by the extracorporeal magic, the Demon King was hard pressed. Rush around as he might, there was no escape for him. In his alarm, the demon took his precious sword in his left hand and reached behind his neck with right hand to bring out the plantain fan. Then he turned towards the fire gods of the southeast, and the constellation Li Gong. He waved the fan. At once flame shot out of the ground, for such was the power of that treasure. The monster was truly ruthless. He waved the fan 7 or 8 times, setting great fires, burning heaven and earth. It was a fine blaze. Not a heavenly fire, nor a fire in a furnace, nor a fire on the mountain, nor a fire under the pot, but the miraculous fire that comes from the 5 elements. The fan is no ordinary object, nor was it fashioned by human skill. It is a treasure made when chaos was first parted. The fire caused by this fan shines and dazzles like red silk lightning, burns and blazes like crimson gauze sunsets. Not a wisp of smoke, only a mountain covered in flame, turning the pines on its ridges into trees of fire, and the cypresses by its crags into lanterns. The beasts in their dens, fearful for their lives, rush hither and thither. The birds in the woods, to save their feathers, fly far and high. The magic fire that roars up to the sky destroys the rocks, dries up the streams, and makes all red. The great sage trembled with fear at the sight of this evil fire. "This is terrible," he said. "It may do me no harm, but I can't save those hairs of mine. If they're caught by the fire, they're burned the way hair does." So he shook himself and took the hair back on his body, leaving just one behind as a facsimile of himself. Then, to avoid disaster by fire, his real self somersaulted upwards, reciting a spell to ward off the fire, and escaped from the inferno. He went straight back to the Lotus Flower Cave in the hope of rescuing his master. He rushed to the cave doors, brought his cloud down to land, and found over 100 little devils there with smashed heads, broken legs, and open wounds. They had all been wounded by his magical other selves, and were now standing there howling in agony. At the sight of them, the great sage could not restrain his evil and murderous nature. He laid into them, swinging his iron cudgel. The poor devils, who were the fruit of so much hard work to acquire human form, became so many pieces of worn and hairy hide once more. Having wiped out all the little devils, the great sage stormed into the cave to free his master. Seeing more dazzling flames inside, he was struck by a thought that filled him with panic. "That's done it! The fire's come in through the back door. There's no way I'll be able to rescue the master." Terrified though he was, he looked more carefully and saw that it was not flames, but a golden glow. Pulling himself together, he looked inside and saw that the light came from a vase in mutton-fat jade. "What a beauty!" he thought with glee. "That's the vase that shone on the mountain when those 2 little devils were carrying it. I took it off them, then the Demon King found it when he searched me later. Now I see that it shines when they keep it here too." Watch him as he takes such pleasure in stealing the vase that, instead of rescuing his master, he gets out of the cave as fast as he can. He was just outside when the Demon King appeared from the south, brandishing his magic sword and the fan. Before the great sage could take evasive action, the demon raised the sword and hacked at his face. But the great sage immediately soared into the air on a somersault cloud and disappeared without trace. Back at the cave mouth, the Demon King was so distressed by the sight of the corpses of his spirits all over the place that he threw back his head and groaned, and could not help wailing loudly at the pain of it. This is proved by a poem that goes, "Wicked the ape, and stubborn the evil horse, that had their souls reborn in mortal form, because in their folly they left the halls of heaven. They forgot themselves and landed in these hills. Woeful the swan that loses the flock, tearful the demon soldiers whose race is destroyed. When will their sin be done and their bonds released, so that they may return to their heavenly home?" Overcome with remorse, the senior Demon King sobbed at every step as he went into the cave. Although all the objects and furniture were still in the cave, it was silent and deserted. It made him even more lonely and depressed. He sat alone in the cave, slumped on the stone table, the sword leaning against it, and the fan behind his neck again. Thus he drifted into sleep. Indeed, happiness braces the spirit. Sorrow just sends you to sleep. The story goes on to tell how the great sage Sun turned his somersault cloud round and brought it to a stop in front of the mountain. As he wanted to rescue his master, he fastened the vase securely at his waist, and went back to the cave to reconnoiter. The doors were wide open, and the silence was unbroken, so he crept stealthily inside to find the old demon slumped against the stone table, fast asleep. The plantain fan stuck out from his clothes at his shoulder, half covering the back of his head, and the seven-star sword was still leaning against the table. Monkey made his way forward very quietly, pulled the fan out, then turned and whooshed out. This was because the fan had rubbed against the monster's hair, waking him up. As soon as he looked up and saw that Monkey had stolen the fan, he grabbed for his sword and went after him. By now, Monkey was already outside the doors, the fan safely tucked in his belt, and his iron cudgel in his hands as he met the monster's onslaught. It was a splendid fight. The angry Demon King, beside himself with fury, angry enough to swallow Monkey whole, unable to let off his rage, viciously he cursed the ape. "You're always trying to fool with me. You've killed so many of my people, and you've taken away my treasures. There'll be no mercy in this fight. We'll see who's to survive." The great sage yelled back at the demon, "You haven't a lick of sense. For a beginner like you to fight against me would be like trying to smash a rock with eggs." The sword was met by the iron cudgel, as both sides fought without giving quarter. In clash after clash, they struggled for mastery, turning and twisting to show their skill in arms. To rescue the pilgrim priest and visit the Buddha on Vulture Peak, metal and fire would not yield to each other, and the chaos of the elements destroyed their friendship. As they showed their martial prowess and magic powers, they sent stones and sand flying with their display of skill. As they fought, the sun was slowly setting. The frightened demon was the first to quit. After 30 or 40 rounds of fighting against Monkey, by when the day was almost over, the Demon King could hold out no longer, and he broke away defeated. He made off to the southwest, heading for the crushed dragon cave. Monkey then brought his cloud down to land and rushed straight back into the Lotus Flower Cave, where he freed the Tang priest, pig, and Friar Sand. The three of them thanked Monkey for delivering them from dire peril, then asked where the demons had gone. To this, Monkey replied, "The Junior Demon King is inside the gourd, and I reckon he must have dissolved by now. I've just beaten the Senior King, and he's gone back to the Crushed Dragon Cave. As for the little devils from the cave, I killed half of them with my magical extra bodies, then wiped out the wounded survivors of the rout who came back here. That's how I was able to get in here to rescue you." The Tang priest thanked him to no end. "I'm so grateful to you for your great efforts, disciple." "You're telling me it was a great effort," laughed Monkey. "You lot only had to put up with the pain of being hung up, but I wasn't allowed to stand still for a moment. I was more rushed than a postal courier with an urgent message, having to charge around all over the place without stopping. I was only able to put the demons down because I stole their treasures." "Show us the gourd, brother," said Pig. "I think he must have dissolved by now." Monkey took the vase from his belt, and then produced the dazzling golden cord and the fan, before bringing the gourd out in his hands. "Don't look inside," he said. "Don't. When he put me in there, I tricked him into taking the lid off and letting me get away by swilling saliva round in my mouth. We absolutely mustn't take the lid off in case he plays a trick on us and escapes too." In their happiness, master and disciples found the rice, noodles, and vegetables in the cave, cleaned up the stove and cooking pots, and made themselves a vegetarian meal. When they were full, they went to sleep in the cave. Nothing worth recounting happened that night, and before long the new day dawned. The Senior Demon King, meanwhile, had gone straight to the Crushed Dragon Mountain, where he called together all the she-devils and told them how his mother had been murdered, his brother put in the gourd, the devil soldiers all killed, and the treasures stolen. At this, the she-devils all wept. After they had been wailing for a long time, he said, "Try not to upset yourselves. I still have my 7-star sword, and I'm going to parade all you women soldiers behind the Crushed Dragon Mountain, where I'll borrow some troops from my relatives. My mind is made up. I'll capture Sun the Novice and have my revenge on him." The words were not out of his mouth before a little devil from outside the doors reported, "Your Majesty, your Lord Uncle from the other side of the mountains is here with soldiers." At this news, the Senior Demon King quickly put on white mourning garments and went out to greet him in person. This Lord Uncle was King Septimus Fox, the younger brother of the Demon King's mother, and he had heard from the devils of his who were out patrolling the mountains how Monkey had killed his sister, then impersonated her to steal his nephew's treasures, and was fighting him in the Battle of Flat Top Mountain that same day. Septimus Fox was bringing over 200 of his own devil troops to help in the battle when he called for news at his sister's place on the way. As soon as he stepped inside and saw the Demon King in mourning for his mother, the two of them started to weep aloud. After weeping for some time, the Demon King bowed to him and told him what had happened. In his anger, Septimus told the Demon King to change out of his mourning clothes, pick up his sword, call the roll of women soldiers, and join forces with him. They then set off on winds and clouds towards the northeast. The great sage had just told Friar Sand to get the breakfast ready, as they would set off straight after eating it, when he heard the sound of a wind. Going outside to look, he saw a host of demon soldiers approaching from the southwest. This alarmed him, so he ran back in a hurry and shouted to Pig, "Brother, that evil spirit is back again with reinforcements." Sanzang went pale with fright at the news. "Disciple," he asked, "what can this mean?" "Don't worry," chuckled Monkey. "Don't worry. Fetch me all their treasures." The great sage then tucked the gourd and the vase in his belt, put the dazzling golden cord in his sleeve, stuck the plantain fan behind his shoulder, and whirled the iron cudgel around with both his hands. Friar Sand he ordered to stay put inside the cave guarding the master, while he asked Pig to come outside with his rake to meet the enemy. When the demon's line of battle was drawn up, King Septimus Fox took command. He had a jade face and long whiskers, a brow of steel and ears like swords. His helmet was of refined gold. He wore chainmail armor, and he held a heaven-square halberd. "I'll get you, you bold and impudent ape," he shouted. "How dare you treat people so badly? You've stolen the treasures, wounded my relations, killed the demon soldiers, and to top it all, occupied their cave palace. All of you stretch out your heads to be executed while I avenge my sister's family." "You hairy crowd, you misery makers," replied Monkey. "You can't realize what powers I have. Don't go. Take this from my cudgel." The monster twisted round to avoid the blow, then struck back at his head with the heaven-square halberd. The two of them fought 3 or 4 rounds on the mountaintop until the monster was too weak to continue. He fled from the field, followed by Monkey, until he was blocked by the senior Demon King. When these two had fought 3 more rounds, Septimus Fox came back into the attack. Seeing this from where he was at the edge of the battle, Pig brandished his 9-toothed rake to stop him. The battle went on for an undecidedly long time, with each fighter blocked by another, until the Demon King called up all the demon troops to surround Pig. Sanzang, meanwhile, was sitting in the cave hearing the shouts and the shaking of the ground. He told Friar Sand to go outside and see whether or not his brother was winning. Friar Sand raised his demon-quelling staff and charged out with a roar, putting the devilish horde to flight. Seeing that things were going badly, Septimus turned to flee, only to be caught by a blow on the back from Pig's rake as Pig came after him. At this, 9 jets of blood gushed out of him, and the poor spirit's true being carried on ahead of him. When Pig grabbed him and tore off his clothes, he saw that Septimus was, in fact, a fox spirit. At the sight of his uncle being wounded, the Demon King broke away from Monkey and raised his sword to strike at Pig, who parried with his rake. While the two of them were fighting it out, Friar Sand came up and struck at the Demon King with his staff. This was more than the demon could cope with, so he set off on his wind and cloud, fleeing south with Pig and Friar Sand close on his heels. Seeing this, the great sage at once went soaring up into the sky on his cloud. He brought out the vase to catch the old demon in. "King Goldenhorn!" he shouted, and the old demon, imagining that one of his defeated little devils was calling, turned to reply. Into the vase he whistled, and Monkey put on a label reading, "To the great Lord Lao, to be dealt with urgently in accordance with the statutes and ordinances." The seven-star sword fell to the ground, and it too was now Monkey's. "You've got the sword, brother," said Pig as he came towards him. "But where's the evil spirit?" "He's done for," laughed Monkey. "I've got him in this face." Like Pig, Friar Sand was delighted when he heard. Now that all the evil spirits had been wiped out, the disciples went back into the cave to tell the good news to Sun Zung. "The mountain has been cleaned up, and the demons no longer exist. Please mount, master, and we'll be on our way." Sun Zung was beside himself with joy. Master and disciples ate their breakfast, got their baggage and horse ready, and hurried on their way west. As they were walking along, a blind man suddenly appeared beside the path, went up to them, and seized Sun Zung's horse. "Where are you going, monk?" he asked. "Give me back my treasures." "That's done it," said Pig with horror. "It's the old demon here to demand his treasures back." When Monkey looked carefully and saw that it was the Supreme Lord Lao Tzu, he rushed up to him, greeted him, and asked, "Where are you going, old fellow?" The venerable elder at once rose up to his throne in the realm of jade, drew himself upright amid the 9 mists, and called, "Son the novice, give me back my treasures." The great sage rose into the air and asked, "What treasures?" "I use the gourd to keep cinnabar, and the vase to hold water," replied the Lord Lao. "The precious sword I use for refining demons, the fan for fanning my fire, and the cord for tying round my gown. One of those 2 demons was a servant boy who looked after my golden furnace, and the other a servant who looked after my silver furnace. They stole my treasures and came down to the mortal world. I could not find them anywhere. You've done a very good deed in capturing them." "You're very rude indeed, old fellow," said the great sage. "You deserve to be charged with laxity for allowing members of your household to become evil spirits." "Don't blame the wrong person," said Lord Lao. "It has nothing to do with me. It was the Bodhisattva from the sea who asked me for the loan of them 3 times, and sent them here to be turned into monsters to test whether your master and his disciples truly wanted to go to the West." On hearing this, the great sage thought, "That Bodhisattva is a terrible old liar. When she delivered me and told me to protect the Tang priest on his journey to the West to fetch the scriptures, I said that the journey would be tough and difficult. She promised to come and help me whenever things were really desperate. But so far from helping, she sent evil spirits to play me up and give me a hard time. The liar! She deserves to be an old maid all her life. If the old fellow hadn't come here himself, I most certainly would not have given them back to him. But now that you've told me all this, you'd better have them." When the Lord Lao had his 5 treasures back, he took the stoppers out of the gourd and the vase and tipped out 2 wisps of immortal vapor. As he pointed at them, they turned into his servants of the gold and silver furnace, who waited on him on either side. Then a myriad rays of colored light appeared, and they floated back to the Tushita Palace and drifted straight on up to the Daluo heaven. If you don't know what happened afterwards, or how the great sage Sun protected the Tang priest, or when they reached the western heaven, listen to the explanations in the next installment.